Good evening, students. So today we'll continue with the same chapter 16, which we started last week. And as you all recollect, so far in this chapter, we have discussed the main provision, which is heart of the provision, that is appeals. We have discussed appeal before Joint Commissioner or Commissioner of Income Tax Appeal, which is the first level appellate authority. Then we discussed an appeal before Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, ITAT, which is a second level appellate authority, and also the final fact finding authority. As you recollect, we had discussed this part in great detail. And then the appeal before High Court in relation to any issue which involves question of law. And finally, the last apex body, which is the Supreme Court of India, the appeal before the Supreme Court. We have discussed timeline, process, what is the cost involved, and all those procedural aspects which are connected with the appeal proceedings. Now, in the today's session, the objective would be to cover the remaining aspects of this chapter, which is the provisions relating to revision of orders by the Commissioner of Income Tax under Section 263 and 264. Just like appeal, the provisions relating to revision are equally very important because practically we have been seeing a lot of cases being picked up for reassessment. So this subject or this topic per se holds a great significance. And it also has, a lot of amendments in the recent times this section has faced. So we'll, briefly touch upon them. And then there are certain miscellaneous topics to be covered. For example, doctrine of partial merger and total merger, and the monetary limits fixed by the CBDT for filing of appeal by the department before the appellate authorities. So all those aspects we will discuss, and then we'll touch upon the judicial rulings or the case laws, as well as some question and answers. Now, if at any point of time, as we mentioned last time, the way we will conduct the session is we'll try to keep this session very interactive because this is completely a practical provision which is practiced a lot, and a lot of cases are there. So it's very important that we keep this interactive. I would request the students to share all the queries that they might be having relating to this topic. Put your questions in the chat box or ask the admin team to unmute you so that you can, have a dialogue here for the benefit of all. And apart from what is contained in the study material, if you have at any point of time any issue or any query relating to the practical implications or any issue that you have faced during your internship for which you are seeking an answer, please feel free to participate and ask so that we all benefit from your questions and you also get your answers sorted. So I think we will follow the same approach as I mentioned. We'll read the provisions line by line, and we'll give you sufficient time to read it and ask the questions. So, Section 263, revision of orders prejudicial to the interest of revenue. What does the section says? Subsection 1 says if the Principal Chief Commissioner or Chief Commissioner or Principal Commissioner or Commissioner considers that any order passed by the assessing officer or the transfer pricing officer under Section 92 CA, as the case may be. Now, this is very important, is erroneous insofar as it is prejudicial to the interest of revenue. Now, highlight these words, erroneous insofar as it is prejudicial to the interest of revenue. So, the authority is vested with the Principal Chief Commissioner or Chief Commissioner, Principal Commissioner or Commissioner. Now, these four authorities have been authorized or empowered under the section or to invoke the revisionary proceeding section when they consider that any order passed by the assessing officer or transfer pricing officer under Section 92 CA is erroneous insofar as it is prejudicial to the interest of revenue. Now, there are twin conditions. One, the order has to be erroneous. And number two, the order has to be prejudicial to the interest of revenue. If in a particular order, it is found that it is merely an erroneous, but it is not prejudicial to the interest of revenue, this will not call for revision under section 263 or vice versa. If the order is prejudicial to the interest of revenue, but it is not erroneous, in that case, again, revisionary proceedings cannot be initiated. There has to be two conditions to be satisfied at the same time in order to invoke the provisions relating to revision of an order. Now, why do we want to do the revision? What is the meaning of erroneous or prejudicial to the interest of revenue? In what circumstances the order needs to be revised, or who is going to revise it, timeline? All of it is contained in section 263. Now, this whole exercise has to be done. Please bear in mind that it has to be done only for the benefit of income tax department. So, for example, as we discussed earlier, in the normal course, if an order is passed, once you file your return of income, return gets picked up for a scrutiny assessment. You face a scrutiny assessment, certain additions are made, or the order may also be cleaned. The order may also be clean that doesn't contain any kind of additions or adjustment. Now, subsequently, what happens practically? Now, this part that we are going to discuss for next 2 minutes is not part of your syllabus, but it is very important to understand how the things move practically. Now, suppose, for example, we all have learned the audit. Now, those who have done the audit of listed companies, those who have done the audit of large public companies or banks, they would know that there is something called as peer review, which means the audit is conducted by a chartered accountant. Now, a chartered accountant is supposed to follow certain auditing standards which are issued by the institute. He is supposed to follow certain regulatory norms while carrying out the audit. Now, how do we ensure that the chartered accountant has actually carried out the audit in accordance with the auditing standards and he has complied with the regulatory norms? So for that, the institute has a peer review board. Now that peer review board nominates or empanels certain chartered accountants or certain seniors in the profession, and they would kind of do the review of what an auditor has done during the course of audit, whether he has complied with all the norms, and there is a set of rules that they are supposed to follow. So under section 263 also, what happens is the assessing officer carries out an assessment of an assessee. Now, whether during the course of assessment, any action or any omission by an assessing officer which leads the order being erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue, then it is, I would say it is compulsory on the part of Commissioner of Income Tax. If he considers that yes, it is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue and certain conditions are satisfied, then the assessing officer will be directed by the CIT to pass a fresh order or to carry out a assessment, a defresh assessment, or make certain adjustments in accordance with the law. So all those powers have been vested with the CIT to direct the assessing officer as he deems fit. Now those directions could be for enhancement, for modification, or for cancellation of assessment and direction for a fresh assessment. Now this whole section is basically for the benefit of department. Therefore, if you see, what is mentioned is in the highlighted part, it can be for enhancement, modification, or cancellation and direction for fresh assessment. There is no usage of the word reduction in the liability or reduction in the addition which is already made by the assessing officer. So that is why please bear in mind that it is only for the purpose of benefit of department. What can be done? Now, if the order is erroneous insofar as it is prejudicial to the interest of revenue, that means CIT may, after giving the assessee an opportunity of being heard and after making an inquiry, pass an order, including an order enhancing or modifying the assessment or cancelling the assessment and directing a fresh assessment. Now, practically, it is seen that the cases of reassessment as well as the cases relating to 263 primarily arise out of any questions or any internal inquiries which are conducted by the CNAG team. So there is a Comptroller and Auditor General of India that does the audit of Government of India and its various departments, whether it is central, state, or municipal, or whatever it is. Now, income tax is part of the central government, and if the assessing officer is doing certain audit or investigation or any assessment, all those files, once the assessment is complete, those files are verified or reviewed periodically by the CNAG team. And there is also an internal audit team of department. They would have certain concerns with the way assessment was carried out, or if certain kind of lapses are there, then they would kind of raise an inquiry, raise a query, discuss and deliberate with the CIT. This is how it goes at the back end. You need not write all this in your exams or this, but this is just for your information purpose. It is not part of this law. But this is how this all leads to Section 263 invocation. Now, what are the powers? He may enhance or modify the assessment or cancel the assessment and direct a fresh assessment. He can order modifying the order under Section 92 CA, which is basically relating to transfer pricing assessment. And likewise, order cancelling the order passed under Section 92 CA and directing a fresh order to be passed under the said section. An order passed by the assessing officer or the TPO shall be deemed to be erroneous. Now, here it is a presumption under the law. We will deem that the order passed by AO or TPO is erroneous, and insofar as it is prejudicial to the interest of revenue, if, in the opinion of the CIT concerned, now any of these conditions are satisfied. Now, what are those conditions? Please see. The first one, order is passed without making inquiry or verification, which should have been made. Now, say for example, the case of the assessee is picked up by the system. We all know something called as CAS, Computer Assisted Scrutiny Selection. These days, all the returns are picked up, or I would say majority of the returns are picked up on the basis of analytical software, which is deployed by the department. Now, take an example of an assessee where there is a huge debt in the books of account and there is a very thin amount of capital. Now, in this case, the company or an assessee is very highly leveraged. There's a huge debt. Now, the question comes whether all those borrowings are for business purpose. Number two, whether the borrowings are genuine. And number three, what is the credit worthiness of the lenders? So to analyze all these exam points, the system will see, okay, there's a significant borrowing. So let's pick this case for scrutiny assessment. Now, if the main or the key reason for selection of assessment was to examine if the borrowings are genuine or not, and assessing officer is passed, let's say, a clean order without doing any kind of inquiry about the credit worthiness of the lenders, or without asking much of a question about the utilization of the borrowings. In that case, if the officer has not made any inquiry, then the CIT concerned will have the right or the power under Section 263 to direct for the revision of the order in accordance with the law. When the order is passed without allowing any, allowing any relief, but without inquiring about the claim. So if the assessee has claimed certain reliefs, certain deductions, and the assessing officer has failed to do any inquiry into those claims or about the genuineness of those claims, in that case, again, the revision of the proceedings can be carried out. When the order has not been made in accordance with any order, direction, or instruction issued by the CBDT. Now let's step back and understand what Section 119 is. If you read that provision, the provisions has a couple of subsections. One of the subsections says that CBDT is empowered to issue the instructions, directions, specific or general, to the assessing officer or field officers for administrative purpose or for any other purpose as deemed fit. Now, the law is such that for assessing officer, the directions are binding, the instructions are binding. For the assessee, the instruction may not be binding. And generally, assessee is bound to follow what is written in the law and the income tax rule. But so far as the instructions are concerned, they are binding for the assessing officer and not for the assessee. If any order is passed by the department or by the assessing officer, ignoring or contrary to or without following the directions which are given under section 119 or instructions, in that case, the case clearly requires the revision proceeding under section 119, provided again the order should be erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue. But as we saw in the beginning of the section, in these cases, it is deemed that the order is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue. So A, B, C, we are done. Finally, where a situation involves where the order has not been passed in accordance with any decision which is prejudicial to the assessee, and such decision is rendered by jurisdictional high court or the Supreme Court in case of the assessee or any other person. Now, let's take a very simple example. If there is an issue of late deposit of provident fund collected from the assessee. Now we all know that the law is settled, judgments are against the assessee, that if there is a collection of provident fund amount from the employees and if you fail to deposit in time, now that's a permanent disallowance. Even section 43B doesn't come to your rescue. Largely the law is settled. There are judgments contrary to the assessee by various high courts. Some high courts have given favorable ruling. But let's assume for now you are in Delhi or in the Gujarat jurisdiction and Gujarat High Court has given a ruling which is contrary to the assessee. Now, if the assessing officer has given you the kind of a benefit and he has completely ignored the jurisdictional High Court ruling or even the Supreme Court ruling which is contrary to you, now the judgment might be either in your case or even if case of any other person. So again, as we all know, the judgment of a High Court or a Supreme Court is a law of the land. And therefore, if there is any violation or any kind of contrary view taken by or adopted by the assessing officer, which kind of results into order being erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue, that would be subject matter of revision proceedings. By when can I pass an order? Now, no order shall be made after expiry of 2 years from the end of the financial year in which the order sought to be revised was passed. Now we are right now in December. Let's say an assessment order is passed in the month of December. By which date the revisionary order can be passed? The order can be passed earlier than 2 years, expiry of 2 years from end of the financial year in which the order sought to be revised was passed. So if the order sought to be revised is an assessment order, then the date would be, so today it is 9th of December 2025. So you have to count 2 years from the end of 31st March 2026, from the end of the financial year. So that would be by 31st March 2028. The assessing officer is supposed, the revisionary order under 263 is supposed to be passed under section by the CIT concerned. Now, this is very important. Point number 4. This is basically in relation to the concept of partial merger or total merger. We will understand this section here and probably we'll have one more round of discussion towards the end when we discuss the concept of partial and total merger. Now, what it says, where any order referred to in 263 passed by the AO or TPO as the case may be, had been subject matter of any appeal, then the powers of the CIT under section 263(1) shall extend and shall be deemed always to have extended to such matter as had not been considered and decided in such appeal. Now, I'll pause here for a moment and would request if one of the students can explain this provision or you can type your understanding in the chat box. What do you understand by point 4? Are they talking about an order passed under section 263 which has been subject matter of appeal? Or are they talking about an order of assessment passed by AO or TPO as the case may be, which has been subject matter of appeal? This is one. And second point, what is the objective of this section? Just read it and let me know what you understand by this provision. Anyone? All right. So let's discuss this provision. Where any order referred to in section 263(1). Now, what they are saying is order referred in 263(1). They are not saying order under section 263(1). So that means they are referring to an order passed by AO or TPO, which is an assessment order or a TPO order under 92 CM. Where an assessment order, for simple kind of understanding, just take it like this, where an assessment order had been the subject matter of any appeal. So there is an AO order passed, you file an appeal before CIT appeal or tribunal, whatever it is. If it is a TP matter and the TP matter has been adjudicated by the DRP, then you go to the tribunal. So if the order which has been subject matter of appeal before CIT appeal or before the tribunal or any other higher forum, then what? The powers of the CIT, so and so, under 263(1) shall extend and shall be deemed always to have extended to such matter as had not been considered and decided in such appeal. So that means there is a clear demarcation of function or authority here. AO passes an order, and if you find that it is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue, then CIT, if he sees that, okay, these conditions are satisfied, he can direct the AO for revision. But that power of CIT shall extend to such matters which have not been considered and decided in appeal. So, and that has to be only in relation to an assessee. So if the matter is already pending before an appeal authority and it has been decided in such appeal, then those matters have already been adjudicated for that assessment year. So the CIT concerned is not supposed to again direct for the revisionary proceedings. Now there may be a situation, let's say, coming back to the same issue of late deposit of provident fund. In year 1, there was an issue. Now that issue has been subject matter of appeal, decided in appeal, and let's say it is clear, it is out of the purview of 263. Now the same issue is coming up again in the case of same assessee, but for another assessment year. Again, AO passes an order. And if, for example, that AO has not kind of adjudicated this issue and other conditions are satisfied, then CIT has the power to invoke 263. Even if that matter has been decided in appeal for another year. And even if it has been decided by the ITAT. So, of course, the conflict is here. In year one, if the matter has been decided by an ITAT, now, as such, CIT being an authority lower in rank as compared to an ITAT, and if it is a jurisdictional ITAT, then it is binding upon the CIT or the department concerned to follow the ruling of ITAT, particularly when the matter involved is such that it is in case of same assessee. But that drafting lacuna is there. In any case, the CIT still has got power. If the matter has not been subject matter of appeal, he can direct for the revisionary proceedings. So as we discussed, the time limit prescribed is 2 years from the end of the financial year in which order sought to be revised was passed. Now, in computing the period of 2 years, first read it and then we will understand. So very easy to understand. In computing the period of 2 years, the time taken in giving an opportunity to the assessee to be reheard under 129 and the period commencing on the date on which stay on any proceeding under this section was granted by an order or injunction of any court and ending on the date on which certified copy of order vacating the stay was received by the CIT shall be excluded. So that means if you have challenged the 263 proceedings before the court of law and subsequently, let's say, the court upholds the action of the CIT. So it might take years, it may take 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years. Now, in those cases where the order has been, or the directions or the initiation of proceeding under 263 itself has been subject matter of an appeal. In such cases, the time or the period commencing on the day on which the stay on the proceeding was granted and the period ending on the day on which the copy of order vacating the stay was received by the jurisdictional CIT, that shall be excluded, right? And this is quite logical. The time limit, however, doesn't apply in case where the effect has to be given to the finding or direction contained in the order of the court, tribunal, or the Supreme Court. So that is very self-explanatory. We need not discuss in detail unless there is a fact. The revision of other orders. Now, this section is equally important, but limited in scope. And generally, it is seen that this provision is very less in operations. There are very less number of matters as compared to the appeal option because this is an alternative of appeal. It's an alternate remedy as compared to the right of assessee to file an appeal. Let us read the content of this section. In the case of any other order not being an order prejudicial to the revenue, that means we are talking about any order other than the order referred in section 263, which is prejudicial to the interest of revenue. So that means an order which is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue, it will go to section 263. If it is any other order, that means except that order, all other orders would be subject matter of section 264 and subject to certain other conditions. In case of any other order passed by any subordinate authority, subordinate to whom? Subordinate to Chief Commissioner, Principal Chief Commissioner, Principal Commissioner, and Commissioner. So the same authority, Principal CIT, CIT, Principal CCIT, and CCIT. Now, the authorities referred in 263 and 264 are same. Now, these authority may either on his own motion or on receipt of an application from the assessee, call for the record of any proceedings under the Act in the course of which the order was passed. But when will they call for the record of any proceeding? After making such inquiry as may be necessary by the CIT, he may pass the order as he thinks fit. Now, what is important here to note is an order which is not prejudicial to the, not being an order prejudicial to the revenue. That is very important. In case of any other order, not being an order prejudicial to the revenue. That means in favor of revenue. So if there is any action of assessing officer which results into demand in the hands of an assessee, or if the assessee is aggrieved, that means it is prejudicial to the assessee and not prejudicial to the revenue. So it is the opposite of what we discussed in 262. So try to digest this provision. What we are discussing here is any other order. Now, this does not mean the order other than assessment order or TP order. This means any order. So in 263 also, if you see, the section talks about any order passed by AO or TPO. Here you will see any order passed by AO or TPO. Now the same order can also be subject matter of proceeding under 264, but only when this is not being an order prejudicial to the interest of revenue. That means it is in favor of revenue and prejudicial to the interest of assessee. Now, when can this order be revised? Either on his own motion. So if the commissioner is going through the files and record of any proceeding, so he can on his own motion, and the other word used in place of on his own motion can be suo motu. So on his own or on receipt of application from the assessee. Or alternatively, assessee can also file a petition or an application or a request letter in prescribed form. Then what will happen? After making such inquiry, which may be necessary, CIT may pass the order as he thinks fit. So wide powers. जो ठीक लगा, जो अच्छा लगा, he can do it. Right? Point 2. The principal chief commissioner or chief commissioner or principal commissioner or commissioner is not empowered to revise any order on his own motion if a period of more than 1 year has expired from the date of order sought to be revised. So from the date you have to calculate 1 year. Within 1 year, if the application is made, or suo motu if he wants to revise, it can be done. Now, let's say if the application for revision is made by assessee, then what is the timeline? It must be made within 1 year from the date on which order in question was communicated to him, or date on which he otherwise comes to knowledge of it, whichever is earlier. So just like the appeal provision in 264 also, the CIT concerned has power to condone the delay. Now, what can be done? When it can be condoned? When there is a sufficient cause for not making the application within that period. Now, what could be the example of sufficient cause? Number one, the unawareness of the provision can never be a sufficient cause. So that you always remember. But when I am prevented from filing an application due to any other reason, for example, the application could not be uploaded on the portal. Number two, for whatever reason, technical issues or glitches. Number two, the assessee was not available in India and he was prevented through sufficient reasons or genuine reasons to file an appeal. There was a fire, there was an illness. So there could be many other reasons which are beyond the control. They can be treated as a sufficient cause. What is the fee? The revision must be accompanied by a fee of 500. Now, hope you recollect section relating to uh, appeal provisions where we discussed that the filing fee is always based on the quantum. So there were certain thresholds. It was starting from 250, 500,000. And in case of ITER, it was 10,000 as well. But in case of revision, irrespective of the quantum, there's a fixed fee of 500. If an order is passed by the CIT declining to interfere in any proceeding, it shall not be deemed to be an order prejudicial to the interest of revenue. Now, I would want to understand this provision from the students. What do you understand by this provision and why the need of this provision or provision like this? If an order is passed by the CIT declining to interfere in any proceeding, it shall not be deemed to be an order prejudicial to the interest of assessee. What is the significance of this section or this provision, particular provision? बताइए. Sanjay, what do you understand by this provision? You can unmute yourself and explain. The question is understood. If the order is passed by CIT, okay, so what do you understand by this provision? If the question is clear, what is the implication of this section? Let's say there is an order passed by, you file an application and you ask the CIT concerned for revision of order. Subsequently, the CIT concerned is rejecting your application and he is passing an order saying that this matter does not call for revision under 264. That is the situation. Now, in this facts, what is the implication of this provision or why there was a need to have a provision like this? Now, that is very important. All right. So we'll give you, like previous session, we'll give you a 30 minutes time. Meanwhile, we go to the next section and then by that time, if you understand, let me know. The principal commissioner or chief commissioner, principal chief commissioner or chief commissioner, or principal commissioner or commissioner, so again the same four authorities, is not empowered to revise any order in the following cases. Now, these are the specific instance. Where an appeal against the order lies before the joint CIT appeal or the CIT appeal or the tribunal, but it has not been made, okay, the appeal against, let's say, an assessment order lies before the CIT appeal or the tribunal, but it has not been made. Second condition, the time within which the appeal may be made, it has not expired, or in case of an appeal to the CIT appeal or joint CIT appeal or tribunal, assessee has not waived his right of appeal. This is situation one. Situation two, where the order has been made subject to an appeal to the joint CIT appeal or CIT appeal or the tribunal. So that means an appeal has been made. Second situation is very clear. Where the order has been made subject to an appeal before joint CIT appeal or tribunal, then in such case, the CIT concerned cannot or is not empowered to pass any revisionary order. But I want to understand what is the significance of point A, where an appeal against the order lies before the joint CIT appeal or commissioner appeal or tribunal, but it has not been made, and the time within which appeal may be made, it has not expired, or in the case of an appeal to CIT or tribunal, assessee has not waived his right of appeal. What is the meaning of this? It's very simple. I think now, because the finals are approaching, all of this interpretation and all, it must be very quick from your end. What do you understand by this provision? Or try to give me the logic of this provision, because there's a logic also involved in it. Yes, Sanjay, any inputs? Why you are silent today? So I think it is very simple. Let's say an assessment order is passed, and as we all know, there's a time limit of 30 days for filing appeal before first level appellate authority, and then 2 months from the end of the month in which order is received before ITAT, and likewise. Now, if you have not made an order, if you have not made an appeal within those time limit, and those time limits have not expired. So if an assessment order is, let's say, received today on 9th of December, you have got 30 days of time to file an appeal before CIT appeal. Now, within those 30 days, it is talking about this. If the time period within which you have a right of filing an appeal, 30 days, or you have not waived your right of appeal if the time limit has not yet crossed. So in such circumstance, you cannot exercise, or the CIT concerned is not empowered to revise any order. So that means you still have a time and you have not waived your right also. You can exercise your right of filing an appeal. So forum shopping in small words or simple words, I would say forum shopping is not permissible. You cannot have the best of both the worlds. Like you will try exploring revision under 264 and will also try exploring an appeal before CIT. So both are not permissible. Now let's see limitation of time for revision of order by the CIT under 264. एक साल. Now, what about orders? 1 year from the end of the financial year in which application is made. Very simple to remember. So likewise, the provision that we discussed in computing the above time limit, time taken in giving the opportunity to the assessee to be reheard under the proviso to 129, and the period commencing on the date on which stay on any proceeding under this section was granted, and ending on the day on which certified copy of order vacating the stay was received by the jurisdictional CIT, it shall be excluded. Right? So everything is similar, except what you have to remember is under section 263, the order has to be erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue. Now, please note, often the students make a mistake. The condition of 263 is number one, order has to be erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue. That is the key condition. Now, in subsection 2, what it says that order shall be deemed to be erroneous. That does not mean that only in these circumstances the order would be deemed to be, the order would be erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue. There may be a situation which does not fall into any of these. Still, one can say that order is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue. So these are only the cases or circumstances which are creating a deeming fiction under the law. Right? Paceless revision. Now, we all, I think, we are familiar with the assessment proceeding, and there we have discussed that the proceedings before the assessing officer, initially it was face-to-face, one-to-one discussion, physical meetings and all. Then they moved to the virtual assessment where we were aware about who is our assessing officer and all of it. Now, this concept was implemented first at the assessment level, and then thereafter it moved to CIT appeal, revision, and all other proceedings under the prescribed under the income tax law. Now, Section 264 capital A, it is again an enabling provision. Just read it out. What does the section says? The exact ditto, same language you will find in other provisions as well. Now, this is also equally important, 264B. Now, 264A is specifically in relation to a revision under 263 and revision under 264. 264B is not specific to revisionary proceeding. It also covers appeals, appeal before tribunal, high court, and revision proceeding, where it says that the government will make a scheme for eliminating the interface between authority and the assessee, optimizing the utilization of resources, and a team-based, introducing concept of team-based giving of effect to order. Now, question come, what is giving of effect to order with dynamic jurisdiction? What is effect of orders? What do we understand by the term effect of order? What is the purpose of 264B? बताइए 264B का पर्पस क्या है? इफेक्ट ऑफ ऑर्डर का मतलब क्या रहता है और क्यों जरूरत है टू गिव इफेक्ट? बताइए इफेक्ट ऑफ ऑर्डर का मतलब क्या होता है एंड व्हाई देयर इज अ नीड. See, if there is a participation, then it would be very encouraging for me to share more practical questions. Otherwise, our session will be very, very boring without your participation. We will be restricted only to, kind of one-way traffic where I just bombard you with my inputs and few things would be understood, few things completely would be lost sight of. And there will not be an opportunity with you to interact or raise a query after this session. Once the session is over, the topic is over, it's done. Later on, if you have any query, you have absolutely, you may have a different faculty to ask a question, but with the same faculty, it might be very difficult to reach out. So right now it's a live platform. If any query or questions are there, you can ask. So what is the meaning of effect of order? If as an officer, if any proceedings are carried out under 263, then order is passed under 263. If it is carried out in 264, then order is passed under 264. If there is an appeal, then order is passed under 250. If there is an appeal before ITAT, then order is passed accordingly in 254, and likewise, there are other sections. But the question comes, what is the purpose of 264 capital B, which says the government may make a scheme to give effect to the order under section so and so as to impart greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability, blah, blah, blah. Taxpayer rights and obligation. So somebody, Sanjay, is saying taxpayers' rights. What does it mean? I mean, can you elaborate? What is R and O for refund? R and O means? No. These are not the correct answers. I think, let me rephrase the question in a different way. So we have scrutiny assessment section where assessing officer is passing an order under 143.3. There is a reassessment provision where the order is passed under 147. There is a transfer pricing assessment likewise there are rectification proceeding where order is passed under 150. Now these are the order passed typically by an assessing officer. Now once an officer is making an assessment, he is passing an order, the same order as an assessee, I will see whether I have to file an appeal before CIT appeal if I am aggrieved, if there is a demand. Otherwise, if I have received any favor in simple terms because of lapses on the part of assessing officer, the assessing officer will, in coordination with the CIT, there will be a proceeding under section 263. So the order will be revised or a reassessment proceeding might also be carried out subject to conditions. Now, once the reassessment, assessment, or alternatively, if an appeal is carried out, if the matter is in appeal, the CIT appeal will pass an order. If it is before tribunal, the tribunal will pass an order. If it is before High Court, the High Court will pass it. Now, once these higher authorities are passing an order, then what? The implementation or to give effect to these orders, I will again have to go back to the lower or the concerned officer, which is the assessing officer, your own jurisdictional assessing officer, to tell them कि भाई ये order अभी आ चुका है, अभी अपने रिकॉर्ड में से ये डिमांड हटा दे, अपने रिकॉर्ड में से ये एडिशन वगैरह जो है वो निकाल दे और एक क्लीन ऑर्डर पास कर, अगर हाई कोर्ट ने उसको डायरेक्शन दी हुई तो। अगर ऑर्डर मेरे अगेंस्ट है तो उस केस में अगेन द ऑफिसर कंसर्न विल हैव टू पास एन ऑर्डर टू गिव इफेक्ट, उसको इफेक्ट देगा। इसके बाद कॉन्सिक्वेंट डिमांड का अमाउंट भी चेंज होगा। अगर डिमांड का अमाउंट रिफंड में तब्दील हो जाता है तो उस केस में आई एम एंटाइटल टू रिफंड। रिफंड आप कैसे लेंगे? आपको एप्लीकेशन करना रहेगा बट उस एप्लीकेशन का क्या होगा? कुछ नहीं होगा अनलेस एंड अनटिल वो ऑर्डर को ही हमको उसका इफेक्ट रिमूव करवाना है, जो एडवर्स ऑर्डर था। उसके लिए असेसिंग ऑफिसर को बोलना पड़ेगा कि भाई दिस इज द ऑर्डर पास्ड बाय हायर अथॉरिटी, नाउ यू पास एन अपील इफेक्ट ऑर्डर। इट इज ऑल्सो कॉल्ड एज OGE, order giving effect to the order of CIT appeal tribunal, high court, supreme court, or any senior in rank. There is one fundamental and basic difference between 263 and 264. If anybody observed, apart from the mechanical difference of time limit or even the scoping provision, scoping is of course different, but there's one fundamental difference. If anybody would want to highlight, if you have paid a very close attention when we discussed. So this chart just summarizes the provisions. So let us go to the next session. Before we begin this topic, let me quickly move on to concept of doctrine of partial merger and total merger, because this is very closely connected with 263 and 264, and this will highlight the question that I just asked as to what is the difference that you have observed. Let's read it line by line. Section 154 provides that the doctrine of partial merger shall apply where any matter has been considered and decided in any proceedings, appeal, revision relating to an rectifiable order. That means order which has been subject matter of rectification. Now we all know what is section 154. Anybody would make an attempt? What is section 154? What does it deal with? What is the purpose? Yes. Section 154 talks about rectification of mistake. Now, I will just highlight a mistake here. 154 does not talk about only rectification of mistake. The focus of the section is rectification of mistake, which is apparent on record. So it's about apparent mistake, not all and every mistake. It has to be an apparent mistake. Now, that section provides that the doctrine of partial merger shall apply where any matter has been considered and decided in any proceeding, appeal, revision relating to rectifiable. The authority passing such order may amend the order in relation to any matter other than the matter which has been so considered and decided. Therefore, the doctrine of partial merger also holds good for 263. Now, so far as the scope of 154 is concerned, it deals about rectification of apparent mistake. बट वहां पे ऐसा भी लिखा गया है कि अगर आपका कोई मैटर है, लेट्स से 5 मैटर है असेसमेंट में, 5 में से 2 मैटर में ऑफिसर ने गलती कर डाली एंड वो गलती अपेरेंट मिस्टेक है, 3 मैटर्स जो हैं वो अगेन एडिशन से बट अपेरेंट मिस्टेक नहीं है। आप तो अपील फाइल करोगे 30 दिनों में, उस अपील में आप 5 इश्यूज के ग्राउंड्स लिखोगे, फैक्ट्स लिखोगे और उस ऑर्डर को चैलेंज करोगे। क्या हम एक बार अपील में चले गए तो रेक्टिफिकेशन कर सकते हैं? क्वेश्चन 1। क्वेश्चन 2, क्या हम एक बार अपील में चले गए तो 264 में एप्लीकेशन कर सकते हैं? क्वेश्चन नंबर 3, क्या हम अपील में अगर चले गए हैं, CIT अपील वी हैव फाइल, तो whether department can invoke 263, that is can they invoke revisionary proceedings? Assume 5 इश्यूज इन्वॉल्व हैं जिसमें से 5 में एडिशन हुआ है, 3 एडिशन जो हैं वो ऐसे हैं कि आपके अपेरेंट मिस्टेक वाले नहीं है, 2 एडिशन अपेरेंट मिस्टेक वाले हैं, एंड एक इशू ऐसा है जिसमें असेसिंग ऑफिसर has not done any proper verification. So it may call for 263. Now in this situation, how does section 154, 263 and 264 comes into picture? Now try to understand all of this through this chart. So there is a principle. Now this doctrine of merger, it comes from the law itself. Two things, partial merger and total merger. What is the significance is कि अगर मैं अपील में गया तो simultaneously I can also file an application before the assessing officer for rectification of apparent mistake for the same year, but not for an issue which is subject matter of an appeal. So for example, partial or which has been adjudicated in appeal, I'm sorry, not subject matter, which has already been adjudicated in appeal. So assessment order pass हुआ, इसके बाद मुझे कुछ mistake apparent लगा, I can file an application before concerned assessing officer, but at the same time I can also file an appeal on the very same issue. Let's say वो अपील के बाद वो मैटर एडजुडिकेट हो गया, इसके बाद भी उसमें अगर मिस्टेक है तो उस केस में I cannot file an application under 154 because this matter has already been disposed of an appeal. So what does it mean? The amendment of order for rectification of mistake apparent from the record in relation to a matter other than the matter considered and decided in any appeal or revision relating to such order. Now, this is one. Second, in relation to 263 matter, where the order has been passed by AO has been the subject matter of any appeal, the power of principal chief commissioner, principal commissioner, commissioner, it will extend to such matter which has not been considered and decided in the appeal. Now, this is the meaning of partial merger. If I talk about total merger, now that says that revision under section 264, which is the order which is prejudicial to the interest of assessee, not the revenue, यानी revenue के favor में है, order against में pass हुआ है, and there are multiple issues involved. So उस case में there is a total merger of order. That means if the commissioner wants to revise an order under 264, revise an order under section 264, then the commissioner cannot revise any order which has been made the subject matter of an appeal to the joint CIT or the appellate tribunal. So that means in 263 and 154 related matters, there's a partial merger of orders, whereas in case of 264, there is a total merger. So that means if an issue has already been adjudicated in appeal, there are more than one issues involved for the same year, then the issue which has been adjudicated in appeal, the order of lower authority merges with the order of a higher authority limited to that issue. Now, this is only relevant in case of 154 and 263. So that means अगर AO ने ऑर्डर पास किया, वही ऑर्डर में 5 एडिशन हुए हैं, 5 में से 3 एडिशन ऊपर एडजुडिकेट हो गए, डिसाइड हो गए अपील में, तो अभी वो जो अपील में डिसाइड हो चुके उनके रिलेटेड यू कैन नॉट फाइल अ रेक्टिफिकेशन अगेन अंडर 154, दैट इज मर्ज्ड. उनके अलावा वाले इश्यूज पे आप हमेशा कर सकते हो इफ इट इज नॉट एडजुडिकेटेड इन अपील. Likewise in 263. But so far as 264 is concerned, अगर कोई मैटर अपील में गया, I mean not matter, a particular order for a particular assessment year, then in relation to that year, if there is any other issue also involved, you cannot make it a subject matter of revision under 264. So very simple to understand. So now you will read this para, it would be significantly clear to you. We'll just pause here for 2 minutes so that you can read and let me know if you have got any questions in the chat box. Clear? Shall we move ahead? All right. Now let us look at some of the case laws, and then we go back to the other topics. Now these case laws will contain a mix of 263, 254, 250 appeal related provisions, appeal before ITAT. Just read the issue and then we read the relevant first read the issue. Don't go directly to the answer or the analysis of the court. Read and try to understand and apply the provision yourself. Try to understand the question first. I think this seems to be a little bit complex the way it is drafted. Okay, so there's one question. Even if the relief claimed in the revision and relief claimed in the appeal, what is the significance? So I don't know to which issue or question to which point this question is related. In partial merger, okay, let us step and go back. Where exactly? Okay. Let us read so you are referring to the last line. The concept of total merger would apply in the case of section 264. The principal commissioner has no power to revise any order under section 264. So 264 cannot be invoked by a principal commissioner. Even if I file an application, he cannot. If the order has been made subject to an appeal to the appellate tribunal, even if the relief claimed in the revision is different from the relief claimed in the appeal, and irrespective of the fact whether the appeal is by the assessee or by the department. Now, this is very, very, kind of a fundamental difference from partial merger. What total merger says, let's say आपके केस में एक असेसमेंट ऑर्डर पास हुआ है. एक एग्जाम्पल डेवलप करते हैं यहाँ पे. वो असेसमेंट ऑर्डर में दो इश्यूज हैं. एक इशू है डेप्रिसिएशन का डिसअलाउंस है दूसरा इशू है लेट्स से अगेन से प्रोविडेंट फंड रिलेटेड एम्बिग्विटी. नाउ अगर वो ऑर्डर अपील में पेंडिंग है, ट्रिब्यूनल ने ऑर्डर पास नहीं किया है, एडजुडिकेशन नहीं किया है, जस्ट अपील इज पेंडिंग, डिपार्टमेंट का है या असेसी का है, उसकी बात हम नहीं कर रहे, अपील इज पेंडिंग. आपने रिवीजन एप्लीकेशन फाइल की सीआईटी के पास किसी थर्ड इशू के रिलेटेड which is not pending before ITAT, then in that case हमने देखा कि 154 और 263 के केस में अगर कोई मैटर एडजुडिकेट हो चुका है सीआईटी अपील में या ट्रिब्यूनल में, तो फिर आप 154 263 नहीं कर सकते, वो क्लियर है, बिकॉज वो मैटर एडजुडिकेट हो चुका है हायर अथॉरिटी में. आप उसके अलावा वाले मैटर्स के रिलेटेड 154 कर सकते हो, 263 कर सकते हो. 264 is different from 154 and 263 in that sense that the moment you find a particular order, assessment order, has been subject matter of appeal to the tribunal, then even if the relief claimed in the revision, that means assessee ने application file की revision के लिए क्यों करेगा, relief claim करने के लिए. तो अगर असेसी ने एप्लीकेशन फाइल की या डिपार्टमेंट में से सीआईटी ने खुद सुओ मोटो रिलीफ 264 इन्वोक किया, 264 का पर्पस रिलीफ देना है. 264 इज नॉट रेक्टिफिकेशन, 264 इज नॉट एडिशन, 264 इज created only for the benefit of assessee, only for relief to the assessee. You can't pass an order adverse to the assessee under 264. So अगर कोई मैटर आईटीएटी में पड़ा है, कोई ऑर्डर आईटीएटी में पेंडिंग है, then you cannot invoke 264 even in relation to issues which are not pending before ITAT. Just because a particular year is pending before ITAT, your access to 264 is blocked. Whereas the same, and that is where the doctrine of total merger comes into play, even if the relief claimed in the revision is different from the relief claimed in the appeal, and irrespective of the fact whether the appeal is by the assessee or by the department. Right? So there's a total merger of the order of lower authorities with the higher authorities. The moment any particular order has been subject matter of an appeal, the access to 264 is seized. Now, please read the case law and let me know what you understand by the question first. Forget about the answer. What do you understand by the question? We'll go a little slow to catch up because you are new to all these provisions. Right? The question is confusing. So, पहले क्वेश्चन समझ लेते हैं, फिर आंसर पे आते हैं. So, always remember a thumb rule. Don't jump onto the answer without understanding the question fully, because many a time in the exam also, अगर पूछा क्या है वो नहीं समझा है तो लिखना क्या है वो नहीं समझ पाओगे, और वो गलत ही होगा। पहले तो ये समझना है कि पूछा क्या है, एंड देन यू जंप इनटू द कंक्लूजन। Does the limitation period for exercising the power under 263 is to be reckoned from the date of passing of the original assessment order rather than the date of reassessment order for the issues which are covered under the original order but not covered, I'm sorry, in the reassessment order. So the question basically is talking about the calculation of the limitation period. Limitation period to pass an order under 263 CIT के लिए जो अवेलेबल है उसकी बात कर रहे हैं। वो कब से गिना जाएगा? इन अ सिचुएशन वेयर ओरिजिनल असेसमेंट ऑर्डर भी है और रीअसेसमेंट भी है। आई थिंक echo of my voice is coming. Let me just reconnect. By that time, you just read this. Now we all know Section 263 provides for the revision of revisionary power with the CIT appeal in case where the order passed by AO is prejudicial to the interest of revenue. Now, the wording of the section is any order. It does not mean only assessment order. It also means rectification order. It also means an order passed under section 147 that is relating to reopening or reassessment, or even it may also relate to an order passed pursuant to any search carried out at the assessee's premises or in relation to TDS proceedings, and also covers the TPO. Now, that is the first para. Then it says the order for revision now, what is important to note here is this point. Right? Now, what is the court held in this case? Once an order of assessment is reopened, the previous order of assessment will be held to be set aside. The whole proceeding would start afresh, but the same would not mean that even when the subject matter of reassessment is different and distinct, the entire proceeding would be deemed reopened. Very logical. It means only in a case where the issue before the commissioner at the time of exercising power under 263 relate to the subject matter of reassessment would the limitation start from the date of reassessment. If the subject matter of the reassessment is different, the relevant date for the purpose of determining the period of limitation would be the date of original order. Therefore, Supreme Court says that in case the commissioner wishes to exercise the powers under 263, then it would relate back to the original assessment order, which were not covered in the reassessment, and the limitation would start from the original and not from the reassessment. So now I think it should be clear. एक हुआ original assessment order, उसमें couple of issues are there. Then AO revised the assessment order. 263 में ऑफिसर के पास पावर है CIT के पास कि वो रिवीजन के लिए डायरेक्शन दे सकता है एनहांसमेंट के लिए, बट उसमें लिमिटेशन आ जाती है. हमको टाइम लिमिट ऑलरेडी पता है. व्हाट इज द टाइम लिमिट? 2 years from the end of the financial year. 2 years from the end of the 2 years from the end of the financial year in which order sought to be revised was passed. अभी क्वेश्चन ये आता है, आपको पता है ऑलरेडी कि असेसमेंट ऑर्डर पास करने की स्टैट्यूटरी टाइम लिमिट है, रीअसेसमेंट के लिए भी टाइम लिमिट है, एंड द टाइम लिमिट वेरीज बेस्ड ऑन सर्टेन क्राइटेरिया. इट कुड बी 3 years, 6 years, 10 years, डिपेंडिंग ऑन द कंसर्न मैटर एंड असेसमेंट ईयर इन्वॉल्व्ड एंड द इशू इन्वॉल्व्ड. अभी आज असेसमेंट हुआ दिसंबर 25 में, रीअसेसमेंट हुआ लेट्स से दिसंबर 2029 में, 4 साल के बाद. तो कमिश्नर को अगर रिवाइज करना है रिविजनरी प्रोसीडिंग, और वो जो रिविजनरी प्रोसीडिंग करेगा उसका ताल्लुक ओरिजिनल असेसमेंट ऑर्डर के साथ है, दैट रिविजनरी प्रोसीडिंग आर कनेक्टेड विद द ओरिजिनल फर्स्ट रेगुलर स्क्रूटिनी असेसमेंट, उस इश्यूज के साथ रिलेटेड है वो रिवीजन. रीओपनिंग के साथ उसका कोई नाता नहीं है. तो उस केस में टाइम लिमिट आप कब से काउंट करोगे? तो लॉ में लिखा है sought to be revised was passed. तो 2 साल आपको गिनने के ओरिजिनल असेसमेंट ऑर्डर से. सो एंड ऑफ 31 March 26 प्लस 2 years 31 March 28. अभी 2029 में रीअसेसमेंट हुआ है, और लेट्स से द डेट ऑन विच कमिश्नर प्रपोजेस टू इशू नोटिस अंडर 263 इज 2030. तो उस केस में क्या वो कर सकता है? आंसर इसमें क्या वो रिविजनरी प्रोसीडिंग कर सकता है इन रिलेशन टू रीअसेसमेंट मैटर? आंसर इज यस, बिकॉज उस केस में 2029 में रीअसेसमेंट खत्म हुई, तो उसका जो टाइम बारिंग डेट होगा फॉर रिवीजन अंडर 263 दैट वुड बी 31 March 31. सो यू हैव टू सी एंड लुक एट द कंसर्न्ड ऑर्डर फॉर कंप्यूटेशन ऑफ टाइम लिमिट. एंड रीअसेसमेंट एक बार नहीं 5 बार भी हो सकता है. तो उस केस में आपको कौन सी डेट देखने की? आपको रेलेवेंट ऑर्डर से डेट गिनने की, नाइदर द फर्स्ट ऑर्डर नॉर द लास्ट ऑर्डर. यू हैव टू सी द रेलेवेंट ऑर्डर, एंड वहां से आपको 2 साल काउंट करने. This case law we have already discussed in our previous session, so just have a look and we go to the next one. Or probably after this, we will take a break and will then discuss some other case laws, questions, and the topic relating to filing of appeals. The monetary limits for filing of appeal, I'm sorry. This is a wonderful decision by Bombay High Court in case of truth-free brokers. तो चीज ऐसी है प्रैक्टिकली फ्रेंड्स, अगर आपने रिटर्न फाइल किया, उसमें आपने कोई क्लेम करना रह गया, तो आप रिवाइज कर सकते हैं रिवाइज रिटर्न में जेन्युइन ओमिशन है तो आप क्लेम कीजिए, रिटर्न में भी। अगर रिटर्न फाइल करने की डेट निकल गई, रिवाइज रिटर्न फाइल करने की, तो आप वही रिलीफ अपडेटेड रिटर्न में क्लेम नहीं कर सकते, बिकॉज अपडेटेड रिटर्न कंडीशन है देयर हैज टू बी अ टैक्स लायबिलिटी एंड देयर आर 2 years 4 years अवेलेबल। अभी आप तो रिलीफ क्लेम कर रहे हो, तो व्हाट आर द एवेन्यूज एंड ऑप्शंस अवेलेबल टू यू? एक ऑप्शन है सेक्शन 119। सेक्शन 119 में सीबीडीटी हैज द पावर थ्रू इट्स कमिश्नर टू वेव ऑफ any of the requirement of the provision in case of a genuine situation. So आप condonation के लिए अप्लाई करें and do the necessary filing and officer concerned will grant you a relief. Let's say आपने 119 भी explore नहीं किया, that is a very subjective thing, and उस केस में आपको क्या करना है? तो अगर आपका कोई अपील पेंडिंग है, तो आप अपना एडिशनल ग्राउंड या एडिशनल क्लेम यू कैन रेज बिफोर एन अपेलेट अथॉरिटी। You have an assessment ongoing. Can you put a claim before AO during the course of assessment? Answer is no. But can you put the same claim before the higher appellate authority if appeal is pending? Answer is yes. So that is the fundamental difference you have to remember. In addition to this, there is a separate concept of additional ground and additional evidence. Now, अगर कोई additional ground raise करना है in the appellate proceeding, yes, permissible, you can raise it subject to permission of the concerned appellate jurisdiction. Most of the cases, अगर legal ground है, it is admitted without any questioning. अगर कोई factual चीज है, which may be an additional evidence जो आपने नीचे के level पे produce नहीं किया था, तो उस केस में the authority concerned will call for an objection from the AO, and it will also ask you why I should admit your additional evidence. Now, this I am giving you a holistic picture or a perspective. इस issue के साथ related नहीं है, but you will have a complete common understanding about additional claim, additional ground, and additional evidence. So, with this, I think we have almost reached half the session, and we'll take a short break. Ashok ji, we will take a break now. Okay, thank you. So we'll come back to the case laws in a short while. Meanwhile, let us discuss two important concepts, the small ones, but equally important. Monetary limits for regulating the filing of appeals by the tax department. Now, what is the significance of this concept and the objective? Now, now we all know that a lot of assessments are carried out by the department each year. Against those assessment orders, the appeals are filed by the assessee. In several cases, the issues involved might be same, might be different. There will always be cases where the case is already decided by the High Court or Supreme Court in favor of assessee. Now, even in those cases, a lot of repetitive appeals are filed by the department. In a lot of cases, the issue involved might be having a very low tax effect as compared to the cost of dragging the litigation for years till the final apex court level. So what Section 260 capital A simply states, the Section 268 capital A says that the CBDT is empowered to issue orders, direction, instructions to the income tax authority, fixing the monetary limits for filing the appeal. Now, this section is only for the department. This section is not for the assessee. Now, this is the basic and fundamental difference, or I would say the key aspect to remember, because a lot of time a mistake is done by the students in understanding that the monetary limits which are fixed under this section or pursuant to a CBDT circular are only for the department. There is no any kind of instruction possible where the department would set the monetary limit for the assessee. Assessee can always go to the Supreme Court even if the addition is of only 1,000 rupees or even if it is 100 rupees. You can always go. There is no limit. But so far as the department is concerned, these are the general limit. If the department wants to file an appeal before ITAT, the tax effect should be 60 lakhs. Now, what is tax effect? In which matters this monetary limit is applicable and in which it is not? These are all questions we will discuss as we progress. So these are the simple monetary limits. अगर आपको अपील डिपार्टमेंट को अगर फाइल करनी है ट्रिब्यूनल में तो 50-60 लाख से ज्यादा टैक्स इफेक्ट होना चाहिए कोई मैटर में. अगर 60 लाख से कम है आपको अपील फाइल करने का राइट नहीं है. डिपार्टमेंट कैन नॉट फाइल एन अपील. द मैटर इज डीम्ड टू बी क्लोज्ड इन फेवर ऑफ द असेसी. इन फेवर इन द सेंस जो सीआईटी अपील का ऑर्डर होगा इन अकॉर्डेंस विद द सीआईटी अपील्स ऑर्डर्स द मैटर वुड रेस्ट टू पीस फॉरएवर. हाईकोर्ट जाना है तो टैक्स इफेक्ट 2 करोड़ का होना चाहिए. दैट मीन्स अगर 2 करोड़ से कम है टैक्स इफेक्ट कोई पर्टिकुलर मैटर में तो डिपार्टमेंट कैन नॉट फाइल एन अपील बिफोर हाई कोर्ट फ्रॉम द ऑर्डर ऑफ ट्रिब्यूनल. एंड लाइकवाइज if you want to file an appeal before Supreme Court based on order of High Court, the tax effect should be 5 crore. Now, what is important to note here is these monetary limits are only in relation to the appeals, the tax appeal. They are not in relation to the writ petitions or for any other matter. And second, as I said, I repeat, it is only for the department, not for the assessee. Now let us read it line by line. So point 1 is quite clear. The purpose of fixing the monetary limit is for regulating the filing of appeal or application for reference by the authority concerned. Where the authority has not filed any appeal or application on an issue due to the instruction of CBDT, then the concerned department or authority will not be precluded from filing an appeal on the same issue in case of the same assessee for any other assessment year or any other assessee for the same or any other assessment year. मान दीजिए मैं assessee हूं. I have won the appeal at CIT appeal level for assessment year 21-22. 21-22 assessment year है. अपील में मैं गया था, CIT अपील में जीत गया. टैक्स इफेक्ट था 40 लाख रुपए. अभी मैं जीता, डिपार्टमेंट हैज अ राइट टू फाइल एन अपील. As per this instruction, department cannot file an appeal because tax effect is less than 60 lakhs. तो आप ITET नहीं जा सकते. Second year, again issue is same जो first year था. Same issue, same disallowance. Again वो केस मैं जीत गया. Now the tax effect in the second year is 80 lakhs. Whether department can file an appeal before ITAT? Previous year में department ने file नहीं की है appeal because the tax effect was less than 60 lakh. This year it is more than 60 lakhs. Can it file an appeal? Correct. So yes, it can file an appeal for the same assessee and or even for any other assessee for other assessment year. Third point, it shall not be lawful for an assessee to contend that the authority has acquiesced in the decision on the disputed issue by not filing an appeal or application. यानी कि सेम एग्जाम्पल, फर्स्ट ईयर 40 lakhs का एडिशन हुआ, अपील फाइल नहीं हुई. सेकेंड ईयर 80 lakh का एडिशन हुआ, अपील फाइल हो गई. जब अपील फाइल हुई, ट्रिब्यूनल में मैटर आया. इन ट्रिब्यूनल एज एन assessee, can I contend that department in year 1, that is assessment year 21-22, has not filed an appeal and the issue involved is identical, just that the year is different. Now department is filing an appeal for AY 22-23. Can I say that because in the first year department has accepted the order of CIT appeal and has not filed an appeal, the department should not be allowed to file an appeal for the second year because the issue involved is same? The answer is no, because non-filing of appeal merely because of a monetary threshold reason does not mean the department has accepted the order of the assessee for any other year on the same issue. Now the tribunal or court, point number 4 we are reading. The tribunal or the court concerned should take into consideration the above order of severity and also the circumstance under which such application was not filed or was filed in respect of any issue. So quite connected. And the last one, every order, instruction, direction which has been issued by severity fixing the monetary limits for filing an appeal, it will be deemed to have been issued under subsection 1 and all the provisions of this section shall apply accordingly. So it's a procedural aspect, not requiring much of a discussion. Now, these monetary limits have been revised over a period of last years multiple times, and the limit which is presently applicable is as per circular dated 17 September 2024, and that limit is what we discussed. Before ITAT, it is 60 lakhs. Before High Court, it is 2 crore. And before Supreme Court, it is 5 crore. Now, this is a thumb rule or a general rule which has to be followed by department in each and every case after looking at this, whether the issue involved is legal, factual, on merits or otherwise, doesn't matter. These are the limits department is supposed to consider. But there are certain exceptions or certain situation or cases where these monetary limits will not apply and the department has to compulsory, irrespective of the amount involved or even irrespective of whether the amount is involved at all, will have to file an appeal or can file an appeal, I would say, in those cases. Now, these cases are case A, point A, whatever you call it, where any provision of the act or rules or notification has been held to be constitutionally invalid. Now, just bear with me, CIT appeal and tribunal cannot hold any notification, rule, or act, provision of the act to be constitutionally invalid. The power to decide the constitutional validity is only with High Court and Supreme Court. And therefore, this exception in point A will only be applicable when it's a matter of filing an appeal before Supreme Court. Right? It will never come when it's a matter of filing an appeal before tribunal. It's only when the High Court says that it is constitutionally invalid, the department will have to go to Supreme Court. There, what was the amount involved, tax effect hai, nahi hai, doesn't matter. Simply challenge the validity. Second, where any order, notification, instruction, or circular of the board or the government has been held to be illegal or ultra-virus or otherwise constitutionally invalid. Now, again, the same what we discussed in point number A, largely it is similar. Third, where the assessment is based on information in respect of any offense alleged to have been committed under any other law received from any of the law enforcement or intelligence agencies such as CBI, Enforcement Directorate, Revenue Intelligence, SFIO, NIA, NCB, DGGI, or even state law enforcement agencies such as police, GST department, and all of it. Now, if the assessment is based on such any information for an offense alleged to have been committed under the law. Now, please note, now this is different from a normal addition. If an assessee has committed any offense under these laws, in those cases, while assessment and additions, quantum addition, these are all one thing. These are the other matters. Now, assessee cannot get away from the crimes or from the offenses which he has committed under the other laws. So if these are the matters involved, it is better to move ahead and file an appeal irrespective of what is the quantum. Where the case is one in which prosecution has been filed by the department. Now, here the department means the income tax department in the relevant case, and the trial is pending in any court or conviction order has been passed and the same has not been compounded. Now, let's step back and understand what is the rationale. Now, you all know that in certain situation, for example, where there is a tax evasion or a serious non-compliance to the law, or for example, take a simple matter, there's a delay of deposit of TDS and the amount involved is, let's say, more than 50 lakhs. Now, if you deduct the TDS and do not deposit, you keep the amount belonging to the government with you, then it is seen these days, then the prosecution proceedings are launched. Once the prosecution proceeding is launched, the Commissioner of Income Tax will file a complaint before magistrate court saying कि ये बंदे ने income tax law का compliance नहीं किया, he is liable for imprisonment, so let the court take care of it. Now, एक situation ऐसा है कि prosecution launch हो चुका है and trial is pending in any court. उस केस में आप monetary threshold जो है severity की वो सब ignore करोगे, you will file an appeal. Second, where the conviction order has been passed and the same has not been compounded, यानी compounding का मतलब ये होता है कि आप एक्सेप्ट कर लेते हो कि हाँ मेरे से गलती हो गई, मैं उस गलती को सुधारने के लिए कंपाउंडिंग करना चाहता हूं, मैंने कंपाउंडिंग एप्लीकेशन फाइल की, मैंने प्रिस्क्राइब फीस पे की टू गेट अ रिलीफ. अगर ऐसा नहीं किया है, दैट मीन्स कंपाउंडिंग हैज नॉट बीन डन, In that case, the matter is still pending, and therefore you have to continue with the tax. Ignore these monetary limits and file the appeal before the higher authority. Where strictures or adverse comments have been passed or cost has been levied against the Department of Revenue, CBDT or their officers. अभी कई बार ऐसा रहता है कि in the normal case where the matter is heard by the High Court and अगर High Court को लगता है कि इस केस में ऑफिसर्स का कंडक्ट असेसमेंट के दौरान वो सीरियसली क्वेश्चनेबल था and it was kind of a harassment for the assessee, then High Court has a power to award the cost. I think at some point I had asked the question, what does it mean to award a cost? That means the High Court can direct the department to pay the compensation or damage to the assessee, or it may impose a penalty or any kind of fine on the departmental officer. अभी वो अगर केस इन्वॉल्व है तो उस केस में और सीबीडीटी के खिलाफ अगर कोई स्ट्रिक्चर्स या कोई ऑर्डर पास किया तो उस केस में डिपार्टमेंट हैज अ राइट, इग्नोरिंग द मॉनेटरी लिमिट, कैन फाइल एन अपील. फिर पॉइंट नंबर एफ, where the tax effect is not quantifiable और टैक्स इफेक्ट है ही नहीं, क्वांटम की बात ही नहीं हो रही है. यहाँ पे बात हो रही है रजिस्ट्रेशन ऑफ ट्रस्ट और इंस्टीट्यूशन अंडर 1023C, 12AA, 263 का रिवीजन. इन केसेस में द केस इन्वॉल्विंग सेक्शन रेफर्ड हियर where it is not possible to quantify the tax effect, then in that case you can of course ignore that monetary limit. Where the addition relates to undisclosed foreign income or undisclosed foreign assets or undisclosed foreign bank account. Now, in those cases, no relief available, go ahead. Case involving organized tax evasion, such as bogus capital gain, penny stock, and accommodation entry. Now, the question is only for the participants. What do you mean by the term bogus capital gain, penny stock, or cases involving organized crimes? Hello. What do we mean by the term bogus capital gain or bogus capital loss through penny stock? Penny stock से आप क्या समझते हैं, या accommodation entry? सिंपल भाषा में बताइए, डोंट गेट इनटू टू मच ऑफ कॉम. हिंदी में बताइए, इंग्लिश में बताइए, गुजराती में बताइए, व्हाटएवर लैंग्वेज. What do you understand by these terms? Or have you come across any such cases or scenarios? Anyone would want to make a try? Stocks having market value very low, such as ₹10. Not quite right, but yeah, good attempt. What is penny stock? What do you understand by this term? What is accommodation entry? This is all very important. You are appearing for May exam next year. So if you don't know these terms, how are we gonna deal with these things? Penny stock. You will see hundreds and hundreds of cases coming in these days about penny stock additions, penny stock appeals, accommodation and adjustment and entries. This is quite a norm. See, this answer is not acceptable. Fraud. Please elaborate. What does it mean? What do you understand by the term accommodation entry? There's a generic term, fraud. Okay, there's a fraud done by the assessee again. That can be against any addition. What is the meaning of the term penny stock or accommodation entry? Anyone? Penny stock accommodation entries. If you become a chartered accountant after 6 months, if a client comes to you and you find के order में लिखा है penny stock और उसका addition, अगर आपको penny stock का मतलब ही नहीं पता है तो आप उसको help कैसे करेंगे? ठीक है, प्रोविजन का मतलब अभी हम समझ रहे हैं, बट पेनी स्टॉक अकोमोडेशन एंट्री ये तो काफी नोन टर्म्स हैं. नोन टर्म्स. इट्स अ जीके क्वेश्चन, नॉट रिलेटिंग टू टैक्स. ऑल राइट. So the term penny stock, why this term is coined, or the accommodation entries. Accommodation entry will take first. So generally, let's say you are an assessee and you want to start a business or you want to expand your business and you need a capital, a wide capital for investment purpose. You have a lot of cash. What will you do? You will deposit the cash in a bank. What will happen? The moment you deposit, somebody will ask what is the source of this deposit, right? The questioning can come from bank. It can also come from the department. So if you are not able to explain the source properly, it is deemed that it is your undisclosed income. There is a penalty of 60%. I mean, there is a tax of 60% under section 68. And apart from that, there is a penalty exposure also. What will you do? You'll give your cash to someone, and that someone will give you the check, which will deposit in your account. So in this way, you will be able to save. This way, you will be able to route your money, which is in cash, a black money, into white. Now, this practice, department will detect through various means. And if they find that if you have done something of this sort, accommodation entry, or take another example of bogus capital gain. Now, you all know that the capital gain, long-term capital gain on sale of shares was exempt earlier. Now they have, reduced, increased the tax rate. Then it was 10% up to 1 lakh rupee, and beyond that it was 20%. And then they, up to 1 lakh it was exempt, and in excess of it was 10. So they have, quite frequently and quite often changed the tax rates on long-term capital gain. On sale of listed equity shares, and there were exemption also for so many years. So what was happening? Assessee was routing his transaction into the stock market when the price of a share was, let's say, very insignificant. Let's say it was 1 rupee, 5 rupee, or 10 rupee, or 50 rupees. After a period of time, through artificial demand for the shares, the price of the share would go skyrocket to 1,000 rupees. The moment it reaches 1,000, you will sell it. So you earn a capital gain. And in this fashion, in this way, what you have done, you have earned a capital gain. You made an investment of 100 rupee. It became 1,000 rupee within a short span of 1 month. And then after a certain period, the stock price crashes. And when the stock price crashes, those who had invested 1,000 rupees, they will earn a capital loss. So that if they have any other income, they can adjust it. So the person who wanted loss, he will earn a loss. The person who wanted gain, he will earn a gain. This way, he will monetize himself and he will save the taxes. So this is a fraud, completely a fraud, which should all avoided in all the cases. But this is how a lot of cases have come to the attention of the board, and therefore it has been decided that in matters mein, the monetary limit of 50 lakh, 60, 1 crore, 5 crore, whatever it may be, it will not apply, and you have to, even if, and the benefit would not be available. Where mandated by a court's direction. So जब court direct करती है, then of course you have to file an appeal. The writ matters. Where the department wants to file a writ petition. So of course, writ petition is not filed under the Income Tax Act. It is filed as a constitutional remedy. So you can file it irrespective of the limit. Then matters related to any matter other than income tax law, of course. In respect of litigation arising out of disputes relating to TDS or TCS, about domestic and international charges where dispute relates to determination of nature of transaction. तो यहाँ पे क्वांटम, यहाँ पे ऐसी बात हो रही है कि एक मैटर ऐसा है जो कि एक एग्जाम्पल बन जाएगा, रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ऑफ द होल वॉल्यूम्स ऑफ मैटर. तो उस केस में भले ही TDS का अमाउंट इन्वॉल्व छोटा हो, बट जो इशू डिटरमाइन होगा उसका इम्प्लीकेशन फार रीचिंग होगा. So therefore, irrespective of the quantum involved, one will have to file an appeal before the higher authority. And lastly, any other case or a class of case where the board is of the opinion that it is necessary to do so. 158 AB we will discuss in a short while. For now, just understand that one can defer the filing of appeal to avoid backlog on the judiciary in certain cases. Now, in respect of deferral of appeal under 158 AB, except where the decision to appeal shall be taken on merit without regard to the tax effect and monetary limit. उसकी दो situation दी हुई है. एक, when judicial finality is achieved in favor of revenue in the other case, appeal in the relevant case. So let me not touch upon this part right now because it's still pending for us to discuss 158 AB. So once we discuss this, this provision would be easily understood by all. अभी ये जो लिमिट की हम बात कर रहे थे 7 लाख 2 करोड़ और 5 करोड़, इसको कैलकुलेट कैसे करने का? Now that limit is not for quantum of addition, that is the quantum of tax effect. ये टैक्स इफेक्ट की बात हो रहा है. सो पहला पॉइंट ये है, इन केस नॉट कवर्ड इन 2, 3, 4 बिलो. तो पहले समझ लेते हैं 2, 3, 4 क्या है, बाकी सारी कैटेगरी पॉइंट 1 में कवर हो जाएंगी. इन केस द चार्जेबिलिटी ऑफ इंटरेस्ट इज द इशू अंडर डिस्प्यूट. लेट्स से आपने TDS लेट जमा किया, ऑफिसर ने इंटरेस्ट लगा दिया, आप उस इंटरेस्ट को डिस्प्यूट कर रहे हो. आपने टैक्सेस लेट डिपॉजिट किए, 234 ABC का इंटरेस्ट लग गया, आप उस इंटरेस्ट की कंप्यूटेशनल एस्पेक्ट या फॉर व्हाटएवर रीजन यू आर डिस्प्यूटिंग दैट. नॉर्मल केस में असेसमेंट हुआ, असेसमेंट के बाद असेसी ऑफिसर ने एडिशन किए, 234 ABC का इंटरेस्ट लगाया, आपका अपील सिर्फ इंटरेस्ट के रिलेटेड है. सो इफ इंटरेस्ट अमाउंट इटसेल्फ इज एन इशू, देन आपको अपील फाइल करनी है या नहीं कर सकते, यानी CBDT. For CBDT, what is relevant is the amount of interest, not that any other aspect. For interest becomes a tax effect. In case where returned loss is reduced or assessed as income, assessing ने return file किया, assessing officer ने वो loss reduce कर दिया और उसको income में convert कर दिया. अगर ऐसी कोई situation है और subsequently appeal file हुआ, appeal में assessee जीत गया, again loss पे आ गया, तो उस केस में डिपार्टमेंट अपील फाइल करेगा कि नहीं ITAT में? द टैक्स इफेक्ट वुड इंक्लूड नोशनल टैक्स ऑन डिस्प्यूटेड एडिशन. तो आपको क्या देखने का कि एडिशन कितना है, उस एडिशन पे आप टैक्स कैलकुलेट करोगे एंड वो टैक्स अमाउंट विल बिकम योर टैक्स इफेक्ट एंड दैट विल बी कैलकुलेटेड टू सी वेदर अपील कैन बी फाइल्ड. इन केस ऑफ पेनल्टी ऑर्डर, very easy, quantum of penalty deleted or reduced in the order. Coming back to the first, इन केस नॉट कवर्ड इन 234 बिलो, उस केस में कैसे करेंगे? तो नॉर्मल केस ले लीजिए, असेसमेंट ऑर्डर पास हुआ, असेसमेंट ऑर्डर में कुछ एडिशन हुए, आपने इनकम दिखाई थी रिटर्न में लेट से ₹1,00,000, 5-6 लाख रुपए का एडिशन हो गया, असेस्ड इनकम इज लेट से 7 lakhs. Now you're filing an appeal. Now monetary limit, you filing an appeal, you got the relief, now department is filing an appeal before ITAT or whatever it is. Now how do we calculate tax effect for the department? One, first to calculate tax on the assessed income, कि टोटल इनकम असेस जो था डिपार्टमेंट का, उस पे टैक्स कितना आता है. सो इट्स अ टोटल टैक्स ऑन द असेस्ड इनकम. उसमें से आप माइनस करोगे टैक्स दैट वुड हैव बीन चार्जेबल had such income been reduced by the amount of income in respect of the issues against which appeal is intended to be filed. That means tax on disputed issues. ये लिखा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड वे में बट है बहुत सिंपल. टैक्स ऑन डिस्प्यूटेड इश्यूज, असेस्ड इनकम कितना है 7 लाख, उस पर टैक्स कितना है लेट से 2 लाख. डिस्प्यूटेड इश्यूज कितने हैं, उस पर टैक्स कितना है एक्स अमाउंट, एंड बैलेंस जो आएगा दैट वुड बी योर आंसर. फिर कॉमन पॉइंट है नोट में, वो डिस्कस करने की जरूरत नहीं है, आप लोग स्मार्ट हो, तो वी विल नाउ मूव. सो अगेन ये पॉइंट भी हमारा डिस्कस हो गया. डिपार्टमेंट नॉट प्रिक्लूडेड फ्रॉम फाइलिंग एन अपील अगेंस्ट डिस्प्यूटेड इश्यूज फॉर सब्सिक्वेंट असेसमेंट ईयर if the tax effect exceeds the specified monetary limit in those years. Again, just go through the heading. It is very, very self-explanatory. Will not require any discussion. आप आगे चल के इस चीज का फायदा नहीं ले सकते कि मेरे केस में एओ ने अपील फाइल नहीं की थी तो दूसरे साल में नहीं कर सकता, या फिर अगर अपील फाइल नहीं की तो वो जो डिसअलाउंस था, वो जो इशू था, वो इशू डिपार्टमेंट उसको एक्सेप्ट कर रहा है, या उस इशू पे जो फाइनली वर्डिक्ट आया था उसको एक्सेप्ट कर रहा है. वो सिर्फ मॉनेटरी लिमिट के लिए नहीं किया था. Now let us discuss 158AB, which is probably is the last one for discussion, and then we move on to the judicial update. Just try to understand this through an example. Both these provisions are quite easy to understand. If we digest this example, we'll give you 2 minutes. Any volunteer? What did we understand by this question? Solution is also there. Is it clear? If not, what is not clear? What is clear? Clear? So shall we discuss the section or skip for another one? So let us, for the benefit of all, so there are two, provisions which we need to understand. One is section 158 capital A. Now this relates to a procedure when assessee claims that identical question of law is pending before the High Court or Supreme Court. Now, two things are important here. One, the question of law is pending before High Court or Supreme Court, not an appeal. Generally, question of fact, High Court will not entertain because question of facts is the subject matter of ITAT. Till ITAT you can raise it. It is always a question of law. And it is in relation to the assessee. That is when assessee claims that identical question of law is pending. So what happens? Now, this section makes a provision for avoiding repetitive appeals. यानी एक ही इशू है, ऑलरेडी हाई कोर्ट में पेंडिंग है, आप मल्टीपल ईयर्स में आपकी अपील्स अगर सेम इशू पे आ रही है तो बार बार अपील फाइल करके आप अपना टाइम भी बिगाड़ रहे हैं, हाई कोर्ट का भी बिगाड़ रहे हैं, और पेपर वेस्ट भी हो रहा है, टाइम वेस्ट हो रहा है, कॉस्टिंग ज्यादा जा रही है. क्या करने का? ये सेक्शन में जो लिखा है वो आप कर सकते हो, इट इज ऑप्शनल. हालांकि बहुत कम लोग जाते हैं इस सेक्शन में. Now, this section makes a provision for avoiding repetitive appeals when identical question of law is pending before High Court or Supreme Court, and it is applicable to the assessee. Now, in a situation where an assessee claims that any question of law arising in his case, अपना केस ही देखना है, दूसरे का नहीं. For an assessment year, which is pending before the assessing officer or any appellate authority. So, क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ ये आपने नक्की कर लिया, क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट नहीं है, क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ है. ये पेंडिंग है मेरे केस में बिफोर द असेसिंग ऑफिसर और अपेलेट अथॉरिटी, एंड यही क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ आइडेंटिकल है विद द क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ इन हिज केस, यानी मेरे ही केस में, फॉर अनदर असेसमेंट ईयर, कोई और साल के लिए, जो कि ऑल्सो पेंडिंग है इन अपील बिफोर हाई कोर्ट और सुप्रीम कोर्ट. सो सिचुएशन आप समझ गए. क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ पेंडिंग है हाई कोर्ट एंड सुप्रीम कोर्ट में फॉर 1 ईयर, एंड सेम क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ इज पेंडिंग बिफोर असेसिंग ऑफिसर और appellate authority. ट्रिब्यूनल की बात नहीं होगी. appellate authority कैन बी CIT appeal tribunal also, and other than appellate authority they are saying before the assessing officer. तो क्या करने का? आपको एक डिक्लेरेशन बनाने का. देन नॉटविथस्टैंडिंग एनीथिंग कंटेंट इन द एक्ट, आप भूल जाओ क्या लिखा है इनकम टैक्स लॉ में, आप भूल जाओ आपके पास कोई अपील फाइल का राइट भी है, सब कुछ भूल जाओ. आप एक डिक्लेरेशन कर सकते हो इन अ फॉर्म दैट इफ द असेसिंग ऑफिसर और द appellate authority agrees to apply in the present case, यानी आप नीचे के लेवल पे बोल रहे हो कि असेसिंग ऑफिसर या CIT अपील, अगर आप अग्री करते हो to apply in the present case, the final decision passed on the other case, यानी मेरा ही केस जो है उसका जो फाइनल डिसीजन आया, then assessee shall not raise again the same question in appeal before any appellate authority or appeal before any high court. और यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन की बात हो रही है, क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ की. अगर कोई क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट है वो तो आप नॉर्मल केस में असेसमेंट अपील में स्टेप वाइज जा सकते हो. अगर सेम आइडेंटिकल क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ है, छोड़ दो. आप पेंडिंग है ना हाई कोर्ट या सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, बार बार क्यों वापस वही लेडर आप चढ़ना चाहते हो? आप सबका टाइम बिगाड़ेंगे. जो हाई कोर्ट बोलेगा वो फॉलो करना है, तो छोड़ दो उसको. बट आप ऐसे ही नहीं छोड़ सकते. आपको असेसिंग ऑफिसर्स को अलाउ करना होगा कि वो करेक्ट क्लेम है कि नहीं, उसका सर्टिफिकेशन दे. वेयर अ डिक्लेरेशन इज फर्निश्ड by the assessee to an appellate authority, the authority shall call for a report from AO ऑन द करेक्टनेस ऑफ द क्लेम। तो अगर आपने अपील लेवल पे किया है तो इट विल कॉल फॉर अ क्लेम। Whether AO makes a request to the appellate authority to give him an opportunity of being heard, it will allow him. तो ठीक है, AO को दी जाएगी कि भाई बता तू। एडमिशन और रिजेक्शन ऑफ क्लेम बाय ऑर्डर इन राइटिंग। नाउ जो भी आप क्लेम करेंगे, आप राइटिंग में डिक्लेरेशन दे रहे हो, तो उसका ऑर्डर भी आपको राइटिंग में मिलेगा। द AO और अथॉरिटी बाय ऑर्डर इन राइटिंग इट विल एडमिट द क्लेम, ठीक है, और रिजेक्ट करेगी। दो ही आंसर होगा, या एडमिट या रिजेक्ट करेगा। अभी अगर रिजेक्ट होता है तो उस रिजेक्शन के सामने आप फिर अपील नहीं फाइल कर सकते, कुछ नहीं, डन एंड डस्टेड। फिर आप नॉर्मल केस में जो अपील कर रहे हो वो करो। एंड यहाँ पे जो रिजेक्शन की बात हो रही है उसका मेरिट्स के साथ कोई लेना देना नहीं है, उसका सिर्फ लेना देना है टू अवॉइड द रिपीटेटिव अपील, टू अवॉइड द ह्यूज ब्लैक बैकलॉग ऑफ अपील्स बिफोर द हायर अथॉरिटीज। आप पढ़ लीजिए। जब क्लेम एडमिट होगा तो क्या होगा? जब फाइनल डिसीजन आया तब क्या होगा? जब फाइनल डिसीजन आ जाएगा तो आपका जो पहला वाला मैटर था जिसमें आपने अपील फाइल नहीं की, अगर वो डिफरेंट है तो अमेंडमेंट की जरूरत है, सेम है तो अमेंडमेंट की जरूरत नहीं है, बट ऑर्डर पास करना पड़ेगा। और अगर मॉडिफाई हुआ है टू दैट एक्सटेंट यू विल मॉडिफाई। फिर फाइनली पॉइंट 7 जो मैंने आपको बताया, अगर आपकी एप्लीकेशन रिजेक्ट हो रही है, आप ऐसे नहीं बोल सकते कि कैसे कर दिया, मैं इसके खिलाफ अपील करूंगा। नहीं, कोई रेमेडी नहीं है, भूल जाओ, नॉर्मल केस में अपील करो। Appellate authority means the first level appellate authority, which is JCA और CIA, और सेकेंड लेवल विच इज appellate tribunal। इसके बाद आप नहीं जा सकते। दूसरा, deferment of appeal by revenue। पहला हमने बात की थी by assessee, now we will talk about deferment of appeal by the revenue when an identical question of law is pending before the High Court or Supreme Court। पढ़ लीजिए पहले, क्वेश्चन हमने ऑलरेडी इलस्ट्रेशन देख लिया, सो इट वाज क्वाइट क्लियर। मैं भी ज्यादा डिस्कस नहीं करूंगा। इमीडिएटली आफ्टर दिस टॉपिक वी विल जंप ऑन टू दी certain judicial case laws। Is there any topic which we have missed in this chapter? Please highlight it here so we can take it। right? So very easy to understand. Now let us move to the equally important part, judicial decisions. So case number 2, we have discussed what is not, the topic which is completely untouched. The Ritas Sabapati we have discussed in last session. Honest export, Lakshman Das Bhatia. Yeah, Reliance Telecom and Reliance Communication. Now, this is also important. Can the powers under 254(2) be exercised by tribunal to recall an order and rehear the order on merits? Just go through it with patience and try to connect this 254(2) with the content of the module. Read section 254(2). Try to differentiate between what is recalling of order, what is review of order, what is rectification of order, because all of it is different. And then understand that what is the difference and what is permissible and what is not permissible. What tribunal cannot do is this. Detailed order was already passed by tribunal in September 6, 2013, holding in favor of department. Now that order cannot be recalled by tribunal under 254. अगर assessee को challenge करना है, even if there is any error, then that remedy available to the assessee is to prefer an appeal before High Court. Assessee ने अपील फाइल कर भी दी, बट देखा कि ट्रिब्यूनल ने ऑलरेडी अपना ऑर्डर रिकॉल कर दिया है, तो assessee ने हाई कोर्ट में जो अपील फाइल की थी उसको विड्रॉ किया. सो फर्स्ट इवेंट इज assessee ने अपील फाइल की ट्रिब्यूनल में, और whosoever filed the appeal, assessee lost, detailed order was passed in favor of department. Then As a natural consequence, SSC filed a appeal before High Court and at the same time MA before the tribunal. अभी MA जो है वो MA के थ्रू ट्रिब्यूनल ने अपना पुराना ऑर्डर विड्रॉ कर दिया. सो अगर पुराना ऑर्डर विड्रॉ किया तो एसएससी ने डिपार्टमेंट से अपील विड्रॉ कर दी, हाई कोर्ट से अपील विड्रॉ कर दी, एंड देन फाइनली द मैटर वेंट ऑन. तो डिपार्टमेंट चैलेंज द एक्शन ऑफ ट्रिब्यूनल एंड देयरफॉर the court said that this is something which is not permissible. The order passed by the tribunal recalling its order was unsustainable and it ought to have been set aside by the High Court. And Supreme Court ने क्या बोला कि ओरिजिनली जो आपने ऑर्डर पास किया था उसको रिस्टोर कर दीजिए एंड एसएससी में प्रेफर अपील बिफोर हाई कोर्ट. तो आप नॉर्मल केस में अपील में जाइए, ठीक है. रेक्टिफिकेशन सिर्फ अपेरेंट मिस्टेक का होगा, उसकी वजह से ऑर्डर रिकॉल नहीं होगा, मैटर रीहर्ड नहीं होगा. वंस इट इज डन इट इज डन. नाउ दिस 2021 decision of Supreme Court, Pepsi Foods Limited, one of the best decisions in the recent time and most important practically as well as exam point of view from all perspective. Just go through the facts, understand the provisions so that we can take it forward. What are the provisions relating to stay of demand? Anybody able to recollect? Or you can just turn your module and read section 254 2A once, refresh it, and then try to answer this by yourself. What is written in the section and what is held by the court. So कुछ दिनों पहले if you remember हमने क्या पढ़ा था कि if assessee is filing an appeal before the tribunal, assessee can also file an application for stay of demand. Stay of demand का जो validity रहेगा, initially it will be for 6 months, 180 days. उस 180 days में अगर appeal dispose of नहीं होता, assessee can request for extension. Tribunal can grant the extension, and within extended period of time, अगर appeal dispose of नहीं होता, even for the reasons which are not attributable to the assessee, यानी कि assessee की तरफ से पूरा preparedness था, डिपार्टमेंट एडजर्नमेंट ले रहे थे, डिपार्टमेंट के ऑफिसर अपीयर नहीं हो रहे थे, या फिर वो प्रिपेयर्ड नहीं थे जिसकी वजह से मैटर एडजर्न हो. डिपार्टमेंट या फिर ट्रिब्यूनल में बैकलॉग ही इतना था कि मैटर बोर्ड पे ही नहीं आया, हियरिंग ही नहीं हो पाया, उसमें एसएससी की कोई गलती नहीं है. तो व्हाट द लॉ सेज कि स्टे विल बी वेकेटेड, आपको कंपल्सरीली टैक्स भरना है, फिर ये आप ट्रिब्यूनल में अपील आपका. Then department can enforce the demand, to put it simple. Now, what does the Supreme Court says? Read it. This is what the law says. समझ में आ गया? वी ऑल अंडरस्टूड? सुप्रीम कोर्ट while holding in favor of the assessee, उन्होंने ये प्रोविजन को ही रीवर्ड कर दिया. So what they said, what the provision looks like, and before the Supreme Court judgment and after the Supreme Court judgment, how you have to read it. आपको थर्ड प्रोवाइजो टू 254(2)(a रीड करना है विदाउट द वर्ड इवन and the word not after the words delay in disposal of appeal. Therefore, any order of stay shall stand vacated after the expiry of period mentioned in the section only if the delay in disposing of appeal is attributable to the assessee. उल्टा कर दिया कि अगर डिले इन डिस्पोजल ऑफ अपील इज बिकॉज ऑफ द assessee तो वेकेट होगा. डिपार्टमेंट ने क्या, आई मीन व्हाट द लॉ सेड प्रायर टू जजमेंट, कि भले ही डिले इन डिस्पोजल ऑफ अपील इज नॉट बिकॉज ऑफ assessee, स्टे विल बी वेकेटेड, स्टे चला जाएगा. बट सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने डंडा मारा. सुप्रीम कोर्ट सेड वेट, ये कैसा प्रोविजन है? दिस प्रोविजन इज कैप्रिशियस, इरेशनल, डिसप्रपोर्शनेट, डजंट मेक सेंस एट ऑल. कि गलती किसकी और भुगते कौन? आपने एसएससी को स्टे दिया है 365 दिन का, 365 दिन में आप अपील डिस्पोज ऑफ करो, ये आपका कमिटमेंट है. अगर अपील डिस्पोज नहीं हुआ तो आप बोल रहे हो स्टे वेकेट हो जाएगा, एसएससी को भरना पड़ेगा पैसे जब तक, फिर जाके आगे जाके रिफंड ले ले. बट उसकी गलती ही नहीं है, वो 365 दिन में डिस्पोजल नहीं हुआ, उसका रीजन उसका या ट्रिब्यूनल का फॉल्ट है या डिपार्टमेंट का फॉल्ट है. तो उस केस में यू कैन नॉट फोर्स द असेसी. हाँ, अगर असेसी ने अपीयर नहीं हुआ, असेसी हैज सॉट फ्रीक्वेंट एडजॉर्नमेंट, पेपर बुक फाइल नहीं किया, अपीयर नहीं हुआ, एडवोकेट नहीं आया, ऑल दोस केसेस एट्रिब्यूटेबल टू द असेसी. इन दोस केसेस द प्रोविजन स्टैंड्स, अदरवाइज इट स्टैंड्स मॉडिफाइड. चलो अभी एक छोटा सा सेक्शन 263 रिलेटेड केस लॉ. लेट्स क्विकली रीड इट एंड मूव टू द नेक्स्ट वन. इजी है बहुत समझने में. डॉक्ट्राइन ऑफ पार्शियल मर्जर. हाँ, इसी को ट्विस्ट करते हैं. अगर इशू कोई और होता, यहाँ पे जो है वेदर मैनर ऑफ एलोकेशन ऑफ रेवेन्यू अमंग मेंबर ऑफ एओपी वुड अफेक्ट द लॉयबिलिटी और क्वांटम ऑफ एटीआईवी डिडक्शन, इसके अलावा कोई और इशू होता तो 263 कर सकते हैं. दो क्वेश्चन फ्रेम करते हैं. ये इशू नहीं, कोई और इशू होता, बाकी सारे फैक्ट सेम होते, तो क्या 263 हो सकता है? नहीं. क्या 264 हो सकता है? अगेन कमिंग टू द क्वेश्चन, क्या 263 हो सकता है? रिवीजन प्रेजुडिशियल टू द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ रेवेन्यू. yes or no? Please mention in your chat 263 yes or no, 264 yes or no. Why 263 no? So you have got it right. Partial merger 263 पे अप्लाई होगा. दैट मीन्स अगर कोई और इशू है इसके अलावा तो 263 हो सकता है, बट 264 में टोटल मर्जर हो जाता है. once the matter has been subject matter of appeal, over, you can't invoke 264. सेम इशू है, कोई और इशू है, रेक्टिफिकेशन है, कुछ भी है, डजेंट मैटर. 263 में आपको उसी में 154 हमने क्या सीखा, 154 रीअसेसमेंट एंड 263 उसमें पार्शियल मर्जर लगता है एंड 264 में टोटल मर्जर रहता है. ये दो चीज आपको हमेशा ध्यान रखनी है. Just discuss. तो ये पैरा भी इक्वली इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसीलिए हाईलाइट किया है. सेक्शन का ही मैंडेट है, क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ फ्रेम करना है, उसी के बाद ही हो सकता है. लेट मी सी. ये इंपॉर्टेंट है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट, सैप लैब्स इंडिया प्राइवेट लिमिटेड. एक जनरल क्वेश्चन, ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग chapters are over or it is yet to be taught? Okay, fine. So I think for now, let us go through this case law only. So largely, so why this judgment of Supreme Court? This is a background. Basically, in case of Soft Brand India Private Limited, Karnataka High Court. If you see the statistics, more than 70 to 80% of the cases relating to transfer pricing are in favor of assessing at tribunal level. ITAT का अगर आप statistics निकालेंगे, ज्यादातर केसेस, सिग्निफिकेंट नंबर ऑफ केसेस असेसी के फेवर में. देन डिपार्टमेंट गोज टू हाई कोर्ट. अभी हाई कोर्ट में जाने के लिए क्या कंडीशन है? इट हैज टू बी अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ, सब्सटेंशियल क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ, तभी आप जा सकते हैं हाई कोर्ट में. कर्नाटका हाई कोर्ट ने ऐसा बोला कि ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग का जो सब्जेक्ट है उसमें जो आप अपील लेके आ रहे हो उसमें लॉ का इन्वॉल्व है. देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ. ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग एक छोटा सा अगर एग्जांपल लें, कंपनी ए is in the business of manufacturing of, let's say, cars or vehicles, passenger vehicle. उसने पूरे साल में जो बिजनेस किया, the company earned 10% net profit margin. कंपनी ने रिलेटेड पार्टी के साथ ट्रांजैक्शन किया, इसके लिए उसको ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग का लॉ लागू पड़ गया. वंस द टीपी प्रोविजंस आर एप्लीकेबल, आपको रिपोर्ट बनाना होता है. टेक एन एग्जांपल, एसएससी ने बेंचमार्किंग किया, कुछ कंपेरेबल कंपनीज आइडेंटिफाई किए. लेट्स टेक एन एग्जांपल ऑफ मारुति सुजुकी. मारुति सुजुकी इज सेलिंग द कार्स, इट इज अर्निंग द प्रॉफिट ऑफ 10% net. Now it is also selling the cars to related party, or it is importing components, raw materials, technology from related party. So it is a group company transaction. Now, whether what Maruti Suzuki is earning is arm's length or not, to justify it, Maruti Suzuki ने एनालिसिस किया कि इसी बिजनेस में दूसरे कौन से कार मैन्युफैक्चरर है, उन्होंने कितना प्रॉफिट कमाया है, उनका प्रॉफिट का एवरेज ले लिया और अपना प्रॉफिट दोनों का कंपैरिजन किया. दे सेड ओके, वी आर इन द सेम रेंज, सो आई एम एट आर्म्स लेंथ. ऐसा मारुति ने किया. टीपीओ आया और एओ आया. एओ ने बोला नहीं नहीं वेट, आपने जो कंपेरेबल लिए हैं वो सब सही नहीं है, उसमें से ये निकाल दो, ये ऐड कर दो, ये निकाल दो, ये ऐड कर दो, ऐसे करके मार्जिन गिनो. रिवाइज मार्जिन गिना तो पता चला 25%. आपने 10% कमाया है, कंपेरेबल 25% कमा रहे हैं. तो आपके जो कंपेरेबल है वो रिजेक्ट, मेरे जो कंपेरेबल है वो ऐड करो, फिर गिनो. एसएससी ने चैलेंज किया, ट्रिब्यूनल में एसएससी वन. नाउ डिपार्टमेंट इज गोइंग टू हाई कोर्ट. हाई कोर्ट से रुको, इज इट अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ के कंपेरेबल्स के रिलेटेड ये कंपेरेबल है कि नहीं? क्या ये क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ है? क्या Hyundai मारुति का कंपेरेबल है कि नहीं? इज इट अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ और इज इट अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट? क्या मार्जिन कंप्यूटेशन प्रॉपरली किया है कि नहीं? इज इट अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ और क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट? देयर आर लॉट ऑफ कॉन्सेप्ट्स इन्वॉल्व लाइक वर्किंग कैपिटल एडजस्टमेंट, प्रॉफिट लेवल इंडिकेटर, पीएलआई, टेस्टेड पार्टी, ऑल ऑफ इट. क्या वो क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट है, क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ है? हाई कोर्ट सेज वेट, वी कांट डील विथ इट, इट्स अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट. सो जो ट्रिब्यूनल ने बोला है वहीं पे ही, सही बोला है गलत बोला है हम उस पर कमेंट नहीं कर रहे. हाईकोर्ट ने सिर्फ इतना बोला, कर्नाटका हाईकोर्ट, कि आप यहां नहीं आ सकते, अभी आपका खत्म हो गया मैटर एट ट्रिब्यूनल लेवल, डोंट कम टू अस नाउ. एंड दैट वाज सेम फॉर एसएससी एज वेल. अगर डिपार्टमेंट जीत गया ट्रिब्यूनल लेवल पे एंड डिपार्टमेंट एसएससी फाइल कर रहा है हाईकोर्ट में, तो एसएससी के लिए भी सेम ऑर्डर था कि यू कैन नॉट कम टू अस फॉर कंपेरेबल रिलेटेड इशू. नाउ देयर वर थाउजेंड्स एंड थाउजेंड्स ऑफ सच petitions or appeals which were dismissed. सेम केस में क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ नहीं है. फिर डिपार्टमेंट ने क्या किया, सुप्रीम कोर्ट में अपील फाइल कर दी अगेंस्ट द डिसीजन ऑफ कर्नाटका हाई कोर्ट. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने क्या बोला वो अभी देखते हैं. कहां गया मेरा पेन? नाउ रीड इट, आपको समझ में आ जाएगा, अभी बहुत इजी लगेगा आपको समझ में. When determining the ALP, ALP का मतलब होता है आर्म्स लेंथ प्राइस. Tribunal has to follow the guidelines stipulated under Chapter 10. Chapter 10 yani a chapter which contains TP provisions, which is section 92 to 92F, और उसके related जो rules हैं 10A to 10E, rule 10A to 10E, ये follow करने हैं. Any determination of the arm's length price under Chapter 10, not in accordance with the provisions of the Act, can be considered perverse. Perverse यानी bad in law. And if it is not in accordance with it, it will be considered as a question of law, as perversity itself can be said to be a substantial question of law. So tribunal बोलता है कि आप ऐसा देखो, सुप्रीम कोर्ट बोलता है आप इसको ऐसा मत देखो कि ये फैक्चुअल एक्सरसाइज है और उस तरीके से ये क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ नहीं है तो वी रिजेक्ट. सुप्रीम कोर्ट सेज लुक एट इट फ्रॉम अ डिफरेंट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. Look at it like whether the computation of arm's length price is as per rule 10A to 10E or section 92 to 92F. अगर उस तरीके से देखोगे, so then you decide whether order of tribunal is perverse or not, and therefore whether an appeal can be filed or not can be decided by High Court. I mean, admitted or not can be decided. Is it a question of law? Perversity है कि नहीं वो देखना है. Then Supreme Court also says there cannot be any absolute proposition of law that in all cases where tribunal has determined the ALP, same is final and cannot be subject matter of scrutiny by the High Court. 9. Where the determination of ALP is challenged before High Court can consider and examine the ALP whether it has been determined taking into consideration the guideline. So again, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कर्नाटका हाई कोर्ट को पूरा ओवररूल नहीं किया. व्हाट सुप्रीम कोर्ट सेज कि अगर ट्राइब्यूनल ने कोई मैटर एडजुडिकेट किया और एएलपी डिटरमाइन किया, सो व्हाट यू हैव टू डू, यू सी whether the process followed by tribunal or by the assessee or department, whatever as the case may be, whether that process which is followed to arriving at an ALP, whether this process aligns with rule 10A to E or section 92 to 92F. अगर वो लॉ के हिसाब से नहीं गिना हुआ, that will be a question of law. एक सिंपल एग्जांपल, बिकॉज अभी आपने टीपी प्रोविजन नहीं पढ़े. असेसी ने डेप्रिसिएशन क्लेम किया, डेप्रिसिएशन डिसअलाउ किया डिपार्टमेंट ने, अपील होते होते हाईकोर्ट में गई. हाईकोर्ट बोलता है कि नहीं, इट इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट कि असेट यूज हुआ है कि नहीं, और कंप्यूटेशन एस्पेक्ट इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट, मैं इसमें डील नहीं कर सकता, इट इज नॉट अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ. और सुप्रीम कोर्ट सेज कि क्या डेप्रिसिएशन रूल के हिसाब से गिना गया है कि नहीं, दैट इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ. तो हाई कोर्ट को अपील बाय डिफॉल्ट डिसमिस नहीं करने का, आपको देखने का कि लॉ के हिसाब से गिना है कि नहीं. अगर ये चीज डिस्प्यूट में है देन इट इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ. इसके अलावा कुछ और हो तो इट्स अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ फैक्ट. बट अगर ऐसा है कि वेदर लॉ हैज बीन प्रॉपरली अप्लाइड और नॉट, इफ दैट इज सब्जेक्ट मैटर ऑफ अपील, अगर असेसी ने चैलेंज किया, डिपार्टमेंट ने चैलेंज किया, किसी ने भी किया, देन इट्स अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ. So I think with this we end today's session, and thank you for your participation. I hope I was able to give justice to this chapter 16 with as many practical example as much possible from my end. If there are any questions, please feel free to post your questions in the chat box, or we conclude for the today's session. No questions? Oh, thank you. Thank you for attending, and thank you so much for your active participation. I really appreciate it, and look forward to many more sessions as we have lined up in next 2 months. Good night. Have a nice time. Ashok ji, conclude करें?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good night, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.